Welcome to the JP8 Report. This is James Pierce with the JP8 Report, episode 286. Good afternoon, everyone. Since it's past 12, forgive my voice. I got hit with some allergies, and now I'm coughing. I can barely talk. All right, we'll see how this goes today. I'll get closer to my microphone a little bit so we can actually. I'm not sick. It's just allergy. That's all it was. If I was sick, I wouldn't be on the air right now. So just crossed the wires just a few minutes ago that the Tyler Robinson proceedings, he's the guy that killed Charlie Kirk, will be public. Okay, so that just crossed the wires just a few minutes ago. And like I was telling my wife, I cannot believe. I'm glad I'm not, what do you call it, a lawyer, because, man, that stuff, hard to understand. Let me get there we go. Right, nope. So what I was doing over the weekend, besides getting ready for Christmas, all right, I'm 95% there. I wanted to show you all this before I get going. All right. I'm 95% done with my studio. It's all these holes are filled up. I'm gonna have a monitor. Right here. I may have another screen set up right here. But yeah, it's almost done. So the hard part was setting it all up. So no more green screen in about a few more days, and no more reflective stuff on my hat. It looks like my green screen, right? And I can actually wear white shirts. All right, just so y'all know. I appreciate the patience. All right, so welcome to the JPA Report. Thank y'all for tuning in today. If this is your first time watching me on the air, please click that follow button and click that thumbs up button, which is the like button. And if you can, share or repost it. I really appreciate that. We'll get a cough drop so I don't start coughing on air. Okay? Preventive maintenance. And feel free, if you want to leave something in the chat or in the hard comments, that's appreciated too. Just be advised, if you've never done that before, if you put something in the live chat, it goes away at the end of the podcast. Just so you know, okay? All right. So, JPA Report, I told you all about me. La 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 la. Okay, America 250. I gave you a whole rundown of America 250 events that happened over the last week. It stopped on Saturday, so we pick it up on the 28th of December, which is, this is a bad thing, because I was a soldier one time. General Washington informed his soldiers up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, that he was only going to be able to pay them 1 out of 3 months of pay. That'd be a heart stopper right there for me. But as we know, they survived, right? But he had told them on yesterday, 250 years ago, that the U.S. Army or the Continental Army would only be able to pay its soldiers 1 out of 3 months of pay. And then today, 250 years ago, American forces are in place for the Battle of Quebec, which would take place 2 days from now. And then I have a letter I'm going to read, providing I don't start coughing up a lung. If you didn't believe abolitionists weren't around back in the days of Revolution, I have a letter from a guy named Samuel Hopkins. He wrote a letter to Thomas Cushing, who was one of the delegates at the Second Continental Congress. All right. Much honored sir, the degree of acquaintance I have with you with your indulgence, and your known candor, condescension, and goodness encourage me to address you on an affair which, in my view, is very interesting and calls for the particular attention to the honorable members of the Continental Congress. They have indeed manifested much wisdom and benevolence in advising to a total stop of the slave trade, leading the United American colonies to resolve not to buy any more slaves imported from Africa. This has rejoiced the hearts of many benevolent, pious persons who have long convinced of the unrighteousness and cruelty of the trade, by which so many hundreds of thousands are enslaved, and have we not reason to think this has been one means of obtaining the remarkable and most miraculous protection and success which heaven has hitherto granted to the United Colonies, in their opposition to the unrighteousness and tyranny and struggle for liberty. But if the slave trade be altogether unjust, it is not equally unjust to hold those in slavery, who by this trade have been reduced to an unhappy state. Have they not a right to their liberty, which has been thus violently and altogether without right taken from them? Have they not reason to complain of anyone who withholds it from them? Do not the cries of those oppressed poor reach to the heavens? Will not God require it at the hands of those who refuse to let them go out free? If practicing or promoting the slave trade be inconsistent with what takes place among us in our struggle for liberty, it is not retaining the slaves in bondage, whom by this trade we have in our power, equally inconsistent, and is not there consequently an inconsistence in resolving against the former and yet continuing the latter? And if the righteous and infinitely good governor of the world has given testimony of his approbation of our resolving to put a stop to the slave trade by doing such wonders in our favor, we not reason to fear he will take his protection from us and give us up to the power of oppression and tyranny, when he sees we stop short of what might be reasonably expected, and continue the practice of that which we ourselves have implicitly at least condemned, by refusing to let the oppressed go free and to break every yoke. Does not the conduct of the Lord Dunmore and his ministerialists in taking advantage of the slavery practiced among us and encouraging all slaves to join them by promising them liberty, point out the best, if not only way to defeat them in this granting freedom to them ourselves, so as no longer to use our neighbor's service without wages, but give them their labors what is equal and just. And suffer me to query whether something might not be done to send the light of the gospel to these nations in Africa, who has been injured by much of the slave trade. Would not this have the most direct tendency to put a stop to that unrighteousness, and be the best compensation we can make them? At the same time, it will be an attempt to promote the most important interest, the kingdom of Christ, in obedience to his command, go teach all nations. A proposal of this kind has been entered upon, of which the enclosed will give you some of the particulars. The blacks there mentioned are now with me and have the approbation of Dr. Witherspoon, with whom they spent the last winter. They continued disposed to prosecute the design and would be sent to Guinea in the spring, if any way for their being transported there should open, and money could be collected sufficient to bear the expense. The proposal has been met with good encouragement in England and Scotland, and more than £30 sterling, and has been sent from thence. And we have the reason to expect more, but all communication of this kind is now stopped. Application would be an honorable continental application would be made to the Honorable Continental Congress, and encouragement and patronage of this design, if there were no impropriety in it, and it should be thought it would be well received. And I take leave, kind sir, to ask your opinion and advise in this matter, and to desire you to signify it to me in a line by the bearer, Mr. Anthony, if not inconsistent with the many important affairs which demands your attention. I am, honorable sir, with much respect and esteem, your very humble servant, Samuel Hopkins. Abolitionists, the beginnings of the Republican Party. Yes, that's pretty good. I like that letter because it seems like there was a drive to include the abolitionism of the slave trade and ownership of slaves in the beginnings of the Second Continental Congress. I don't know what happened with it through the end. That'd be something to do a little bit of research on to see what happened. That was actually pretty good. All right. I like how the gospel. Now, in reading that, you heard about Guinea. It's in Western Africa, right? So, a few decades later, President James Monroe, he helped found Liberia on the western African coast, and the capital is Monrovia, and it was for free slaves to go there and repatriate and be free. So maybe that was the beginnings of that movement to reestablish a free state in Western Africa. All right? Hold on just a second here. All right, next on my list is, boy, I miss these guys. I need to go get one. The Dalmatian Burger Group. They're smash burgers right here in Copper's Cove. They do dogs also, hot dogs. Their ingredients are homemade, including the buns, and they're open 11 to 2 and 5:30 to 7, unless they sell out first. And they're in. They're only open Tuesday through Saturday, which is tomorrow. Located at Town Square behind Bushes on the west side of Copper's Cove. All right. And I didn't eat there the whole weekend because we've been crushing it on leftovers from Christmas. We got a little bit left. We're gonna make a chicken pot pie tonight because we had I smoked a chicken over Christmas, and we have just enough left over to make a chicken pot pie. So that's what's for dinner. And that'd be helping my throat out and stuff. That'd be great. Can't wait. But yeah, if you're in the Killeen, Copper's Cove area and you want a good smash burger tomorrow, because they're closed today, tomorrow, come check them out. All right. So next, the JP8 report. That was the title of my. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're in the Copper's Cove clean area, it just sleeted here in Copper's Cove just a few minutes ago. Just so you know. All right. Now, meanwhile, back at the ranch. Trump willing to travel to Ukraine to pitch to Parliament the ceding of land in a bid to end the war. That came out late yesterday afternoon. President Trump on Sunday suggested he would be willing to go to Ukraine to convince the parliament to cede land to Russia in a bid to end the war after meeting with Ukraine leader Volodymyr Zelensky. Wow, they misspelled his last name in New York Post. While declaring peace is closer than ever before, the two leaders held a wide-range discussion over lunch at Mar-a-Lago Sunday afternoon about how to end the nearly 4-year-old conflict. I cannot believe it's been that long, which Trump called the biggest war, deadliest war since World War II. Trump asked a reporter about a post-summit press conference about whether he would go to Ukraine to help end the war, and replied, "I have no problem with doing it. I don't anticipate it. I would like to get the deal done and not necessarily have to go," he said. "But I've offered to go and speak to their parliament," Trump said, specifically referring to the potential need by Ukraine to concede some of their Donbass region to Russia. Trump said, boy, I tell you what, let me intercede on that. I used to do communication support for President Bush over 20 years ago now, okay? That would be a nightmare scenario for the Secret Service. I mean, I know we did it during in Iraq and Afghanistan, but this is in a European war which Russia's involved. That would be a nightmare. I would not want to be part of it. Not that it can't be done, but that would be a nightmare. That would be one of those down and dirties that is like, oh my goodness, you better put you better put U.S. Special Forces in with that one, because that's a dangerous mission right there. But not that it can't be done, because it can be done. Because we have the greatest people in the world to protect the president. Trump said the U.S. and Ukraine were at 95% in agreement with about much of what Zelensky's 20-point peace plan, but acknowledged that certain issues, such as control of Ukraine's contested Donbass region, would be tough to resolve. And that is because in the Ukrainian constitution, it has to be brought to a referendum to approve giving land away, ceding land away. All right. I think the land you're talking about is some of the land has been taken, said, referring to the Russian incursion. Some of the land is may be up for grabs, but it may be taken over the next number of months. But you're better off making the deal now. Throughout the peace talks, Zelensky has maintained that he lacks the authority to cede land to Russia on his own, casting doubt on territorial concessions. During the press conference, the Ukrainian leader explained that the country's parliament could potentially vote on the issue, or they could put it for a referendum. It's their land, Zelensky explained, referring to the Ukrainian people. The land, not of one person. It is the land of our nation for a lot of generations. And then Russian tyrant Vladimir Putin has been adamant that Ukraine cede the rest of the Donbass, despite the Kremlin so far falling short to conquer that territory by force throughout the deadly war. And then Ukraine's newly revamped 20-point plan is a pared-down version of the U.S. 28-point plan, which was viewed as more pro-Russian. All right. Let's see. Some of the highlights. It says they want a 15-year security guarantee from the United States, and that they wouldn't join NATO. So, wow. 250,000 Russians have died in Ukraine, and about 900,000 have been wounded. That's a lot. If that happened to U.S. forces, the president, the new president, and the next new president would all be removed from office. That is terrible. We don't sustain casualties like that no more. More conflict news. Last night, Thailand and Cambodia both agreed to another ceasefire, which is good news. Maybe Russia and Ukraine can take lead from that and stop fighting, right? That would be good. Let's see. Next, Iranian president says it's total war with U.S., Israel, and Europe. I heard this over the weekend. I printed off this from the Fox News. It says Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, I'm sorry for mispronouncing his last name, said his country is engaged in what he describes as a total war with U.S., Israel, and Europe. In an interview published Saturday by Iranian state TV, media, Pezeshkian said that he believes the Western powers want to bring Iran to its knees, the Times of Israel reported. In my opinion, we are at total war with the United States, Israel, and Europe. They want to bring our country to its knees. Pezeshkian argued that the current conflict is more complex than the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, saying his country is now under pressure from every single angle, according to the Times of Israel. If one understands it well, this war is far more complex than that other war. In the war with Iraq, the situation was clear. They fired missiles. We knew where to hit. Here we're besieging. Okay, they are besieging us from every aspect. They are creating problems for us in terms of livelihood, culturally, politically, and security-wise. Despite the strain, Pezeshkian claimed that Iran's military emerged stronger following this June conflict. That's a bunch of BS with Israel, according to the Times of Israel. Our beloved military forces are doing their jobs with strength and now in terms of equipment and manpower. Despite all the problems we have, they are stronger than we are stronger than when they attacked. If they attack us again, they will naturally face a more divisive response, he said. Who does he think he is? They have no air force. They have no air defense. Their military is third world. Most of their surface-to-surface missiles are antiquated and gone. They have no nuclear research facilities. They have no launch capabilities. And they want to thumb their nose at the U.S. and Israel. Who does this guy think he is? What's going to happen is that we will probably end up going across the oceans again with a bunch of B-2 bombers and dropping a bunch more bombs and setting them back to the Stone Age. And their dear people, the Persian people that want to try to live in peace, are going to pay a dear, steep price for the theocracy that's in charge of them right now. and could really care less how the Iranian people are, and going to kill them by the tens of thousands because they don't care about them. That's what's going to happen. And until the people in Iran stand up and overthrow that government without our help, because it can be done easily, they're going to pay a tremendous price for the people that are in charge of that country. We did it. We're celebrating our 250th anniversary as a country, our semi-quincentennial. If we could do it against the most powerful nation in the world, they can do it against the Iranian government, the Iranian imams or whatever, the Ayatollah. All right. But yeah, they keep threatening us, and we're gonna thump you, and you're gonna be without a military, and then it'll all be over with. Oh my goodness. If they want to attack, they will naturally face a more decisive response. All right. Wow. Okay. And then Bibi, Prime Minister Netanyahu, is meeting with the president, and I believe right now that they're meeting right now about the whole matter as it is. So, hold on. Here we go again. Right? Man, not doing too bad right now. Next thing I wanted to talk to you about is Nancy Pelosi. Ants in her pants. Yes, I like to eat really expensive ice cream at the expense of others. So, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi seemingly cautioned House Democrats to refrain from being too trigger happy in seeking impeachment against President Trump. Oh, wait a minute. I got breaking news here. Oh, yeah, what I just told you. I beat their breaking news. Trump and Netanyahu are holding high-stakes Gaza talks right now. And I bet behind closed doors they're talking about Iran also. It seems like Hamas is trying to rearm in the middle of the ceasefire they got going on down there. And that's what he mainly wants to talk to him about. So she's cautioning House Democrats to refrain from being too trigger happy in seeking impeachment against President Trump if they roar back the prior. You got to get there first, lady, and you won't be there. And they don't want Hakeem Jeffries as their leader anymore. So I don't know who she's talking about. She underscored that Trump's actions will dictate whether a third impeachment is warranted and faulted the 47th president for forcing Democrats to attempt to oust him twice before during his first term. Both of them were unwarranted, and they were lied about events that the prosecutors should have been prosecuted for what they did to President Trump. Whether you like him or not, he's our president, and he did nothing wrong to deserve to be impeached twice. All right? And I honestly believe you can't impeach a president after he's left office in the first place. If that was the case, there's a whole string of presidents that did stuff illegally and stuff, like FDR interning the Japanese population in internment camps that were U.S. citizens. Let's start there. Okay? But let's not go resurrect old news and stuff. I've said to people, the person who is responsible for impeachments of Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Yeah, sure. Lying bat. It is not something you decide to do. It's a violation of the Constitution he engages in. he did not violate the Constitution. I think she has dementia. That's just not wanting to admit it. And then Mr. Thaddeus, Al Green trying to impeach President Trump. Many allies and Republicans have alleged that Democrats are scheming to mount a third impeachment within a month of them being sworn in the next congressional term. If they are in power, they will attempt to impeach President Trump every single time they get a chance. There's no more to read that. She's an old bat. She should have been prosecuted for destroying official government paperwork when she tore up the State of the Union speech that was issued to her, that was supposed to go to the National Archives after the speech, which they didn't prosecute her on because President Biden is heartless, and he's heartless. He doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. FBI threatens to denaturalize and deport over the fraud of Minnesota investments. So before we get into that, it was announced over the weekend that the FBI will be evacuating moving from the J. Edgar Hoover building, which is falling apart, and all FBI operations that can be maintained in the D.C. area will be into Ronald Reagan International Trade Building. It'll be modified to fit the FBI and do all their work. And I do believe they're probably going to tear down the Hoover building and rebuild something in its place eventually. But they were... that's the good news. And the other good news is in Minnesota, there's a huge fraud that was overturned, right? They found out about it. And the FBI's been acting upon it. I think it's starting to sleet again. Okay. FBI Director, this is from New York Post, right? FBI Director Kash Patel says the multi-million-dollar fraud uncovered in Minnesota is just a tip of a very large iceberg, as he threatened convicted Somali scammers with denaturalization and deportation. Director Patel said the FBI has surged personnel and investigative resources in the North Star State to take down the fraud schemes even before they had gained attention online. In a lengthy statement on social media, I shared that on my page. That thing is huge. As many of those indicted for fraud and were from Minnesota's Somali population, the largest immigrant group in the state. To date, the FBI dismantled a $250 million fraud scheme that stole federal food aid meant for vulnerable children during COVID, Patel said. The investigation exposed sham vendors, shell companies, large-scale money laundering tied to feed our network future. Defendants included some guy with the last name Mohammed, Ahmed Ali, Hussein Farah, Abdullah Nur Josho, Asha Hassan, Usman Kamra, and something Dual. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce some of those names, especially with stopped-up nose. Each charged with roles ranging from wire fraud and money laundering and conspiracy. Nur and others were charged for attempting to bribe a juror with $120,000 in cash, your tax dollars. Those responsible pled guilty and were sentenced to include 10-year prison term and nearly $48 million in restitution in related cases. The FBI believes that this is just a tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect children in this investigation. Very much more remains ongoing. Now, over the weekend, Nick Shirley, he's a podcaster, he has a 42-minute video that's been going haywire. Not just viral, but haywire. Over 130 million views of the video, and it was profiling a daycare center that wasn't even open in the middle of a school day when kids should be there. And, you know, the word learning is LEARNING, right? Well, on the sign on this daycare center, it was spelled LEANING center. How can you have a learning center and you can't even spell the name of your title of your business correctly? Since when did learning become leaning? And who approved such sign? And who made the sign and didn't, when they QC'd it, and said, hey, do you think we should have put an R in here? Because it would make more sense if it's a learning center, it should say learning. Did a Somali make that sign too? Was it all an inside game? The playing with your tax dollars, hundreds of millions and billions of tax dollars to funnel into the Democrat coffers of their campaign committees and send the residual back to Somalia to help al-Shabaab in their efforts in Somalia also. So if you ever think how in the world Democrats come up with so much money that they're able to actually do that. Think about the misappropriation of government tax dollars that are going to some of these nonprofits and being used to defeat Republicans in their races because nobody can track the money. And it's not all Somalis, all right? There's just legitimate crooks out there, and they're taking advantage of you, Americans out there, and stealing your money from you, right? They want to try to blame Republicans for this mess. The Democrats caused this mess. I'm not even going to read the one by Tim Walz because Mr. Tampon Tim, man. The J6 bomber Brian Cole Jr. said he just snapped, and that was the reason why he made 2 pipe bombs and actually went from the middle of Virginia all the way into D.C. and strategically placed said pipe bombs where if they would have detonated, they would have killed people. And partly plunged us into a civil war because it would have been in the middle of a political rally when those bombs would have detonated. So, I don't know if he's just lying, making up a story, or what, right? I am glad they got the guy behind closed doors. 30-year-old living in a basement in his parents' house, in his mom's house. Go figure that one, right? Well, I'll just read a couple paragraphs from what Tim Walz said about Minnesota fraud. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's office is pushing back against fraud allegations after a viral video showed multiple visits to child care centers in the state, i.e. Nick Shirley, including one that allegedly received millions of dollars in state funding despite appearing largely inactive. Responding to questions about the allegations of the video posted by independent journalist Nick Shirley, a spokesman for the governor told Fox News that Walz has spent years working to crack down on fraud and has taken steps to strengthen oversight of state programs, including initiating investigations into several facilities. I call BS on that. He's the governor of the state. Where Nick Shirley went was recent. They should have not been in business. How long has he been governor? how long does it take to close a business down? Aren't these facilities supposed to be inspected on a yearly basis? At least on a yearly basis. And they're not. Because they didn't care, because it was putting money into the Democrat coffers to further their elective objectives against Republicans. That's what, in the end, that is what's going to be found out. All right. I told you I didn't want to talk about that because I'm getting all my dander up. I got that done. California went to. You can't make this stuff up. Hold on just a second. California's legislature wants to pass a one-time wealth tax on billionaires. If you have assets of $1 billion or more, you will owe the state of California 5%. That means it is to offset Obamacare cuts. So if you have $20 billion, which there's a lot of billionaires out there, they got over $20 billion. If you have $20 billion in assets, that's money, stocks, real estate, cars, computers, that's assets, right? Life insurance policies. If they total is $20 billion, you'll owe $1 billion payable in over 5 years. So if you owe $1 billion in the wealth tax, which should be unconstitutional, right? It'll be $200 million a year you have to pay the state of California. You have to unelect these people. You can't let them keep terrifying the state of California. You got to get rid of them, get them out of your state. Man, Gavin Newsom's almost gone anyway. He's got barely a year left in office. You got to get rid of him. He's going to destroy y'all. I only got a few more things left of my voice to use another cough drop. Hold on. Okay. So next, Erika Kirk. I already told you the good news about her husband's assassin. That all of his court proceedings will be public. Wrong speech. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is the article from Fox News that she was on Fox News Sunday. DHS launches door-to-door search for illegal immigrants at accused fraud sites in Minneapolis. That's breaking news right now. See, it's spinning in Minneapolis. They're going to pay a dear, steep price. And the president just said that there has to be a disarming of Hamas. All right. So, Erika Kirk, the widow of the late Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk, told Fox News' Sharon Bream on Fox News Sunday, that the organization intends to resume its nationwide presence on college campuses. She says, "We are not afraid," she said, adding that TPUSA team will continue to host Prove Me Wrong style debates as part of its campus outreach. Charlie Kirk was assassinated during an outdoor event September 10th at Utah Valley University. The gathering marked the first stop on TPUSA's planned America Comeback Tour. The charismatic TPUSA founder rose to prominence through his signature political debates on college campuses. Moments before the fatal shot, he sat beneath the white tent emblazoned with the slogan, "Prove Me Wrong," fielding an open mic questions from thousands in attendance. His death left behind a movement that reshaped the conservative youth politics, one that his widow, Erika Kirk, told Bream she intends to carry forward. Charlie Kirk began building that movement as a teenager. At 18, he dropped out of community college and co-founded Turning Point USA. By his mid-20s, he became the youngest member of the Republican National Convention in 2016 to hold and a household name in conservative circles. By 31, he commanded a $95 million empire, galvanized millions of followers online, and established a direct line to President Donald Trump. With the backing Republican donors like Forrest Rice, Kirk turned the scrappy campus operation to the fastest growing conservative nonprofits in America. Today, it's a political juggernaut. Its revenue. Okay. And then what I wrote down on here also is that she said TPUSA's Prove Me Wrong debates will return and that she's not afraid to move forward during her interview. It was a good interview that was on yesterday. You need to go back and watch it if you missed it. She has a good loyal backing of people. And what I heard this morning is that they are going to they're going to deploy 99 operatives inside all 99 counties in Iowa and establish a base of operations to get J.D. Vance to become the nominee when it comes time for nominating the new president for 2028's election. So that is the intent of TPUSA, is to get J.D. Vance over the hump. And I fully support that too. All right, so next is, so back on September 6th, there was the State Republican Executive Committee voted 59-3-2 to approve 10 ballot measures for the 3rd of March's primary. All right, and what that is it's suggestions on what the plank of the party should be when we have our convention in the summertime, right? All right, so the 10 propositions are Prop 1, Texas property taxes should be assessed on the purchase price and phase out entirely over the next 6 years through spending reductions. That'd be hard to do. Prop 2, I support the part about on your purchase price, right? But local government officials, organizations like Coppers Cove, Coryell County, Central Texas College, they have to be able to pay for the employees and basic functions of local government. If we did not have that, we would have to have some type of value-added tax to be able to pay for local government, okay? So Prop 2, Texas should require any local government budget that raises property taxes to be approved by voters at a November general election. I agree with that. Prop 3, Texas should prohibit denial of health care or any medical service based solely on the patient's vaccination status. I agree with that. Prop 4, Texas should require public schools to teach that life begins at fertilization. Absolutely agree with that. Prop 5, Texas should ban gender, sexuality, and reproductive clinics and services in K-12 schools. Absolutely should not be there. Prop 6, Texas should enact term limits on all elected officials. Firmly agree with that. Prop 7, Texas should ban the large-scale export or sale of our groundwater and surface water to any single private or public entity. I agree. Prop 8. The Texas legislature should reduce the burden of illegal immigration on taxpayers by ending public services for illegal aliens. I agree. The Republican-controlled Texas legislature should stop awarding leadership positions, including committees and subcommittee chairmen and vice chairmanships, to Democrats. Absolutely. And then Prop 10. Texas should prohibit Sharia law. Sharia law is a direct contradiction to the Texas Constitution and the United States Constitution. It should not be allowed to exist anywhere inside the United States in any fashion, form or fashion. So I like all 10 of these except for the second half of Proposition 1, where it says Texas property tax should be assessed at the purchase price, period, because it phased out entirely over the next 6 years through spending reductions. There's no way possible that would actually work unless you come up with a consumption tax. So that means our 8.25% sales tax would jump to about 16 cents, probably, on the purchase price of everything, okay? But you wouldn't have property taxes then, right? But the price of everything else would go through the roof. So what it says on here, I was only going to read a couple. Texas Republicans have released 10 props that will appear on party's March 2026 primary ballot. Non-binding ballot propositions are used to gauge support for the issues presented. The results will guide the party's legislative priorities in 2027, which will be decided during the convention in June. Okay, the measures, and I told you what it was. The president's meeting with the Israelis right now. And then I did put another deal on here. There were 4 major laws that go into effect in Texas on Thursday, and then 31 overall. I posted the link for all the new laws going into effect in Texas on the comments section. So if you go to the comments section, you'll see that. All right. So the forum is Senate Bill 2420, which require mobile app stores to verify users' ages with a commercially reasonable method when a new account is created or for an in-app purchase. So a federal judge put that one on hold until they can figure out how to make it work. Senate Bill 8. Senate Bill 8 requires county sheriffs who operate a jail to enter an agreement with ICE under Immigration Nationalization Act or similar programs. It is a 287G agreement, allows local sheriff's departments to work with federal authorities to enforce immigration law. And then House Bill 149 is Texas Reasonable Artificial Intelligence Governance Act, a statewide framework that restricts certain harmful AI uses to create pro-innovation structures like regulatory sandbox and advisory council. I don't understand that one. Okay, and then Senate Bill 1502 mandates that if voters decline to approve a school district tax rate increase above the voter approval rate, School boards cannot use the disaster provision as a backdoor to levy a higher rate anyway. Oh my goodness. That makes so much sense. That article was written by Eddie Hovland from the Texas Scorecard. All right. We have an emergency. Buildings are all falling down. We need to pass a 20% tax rate. Now you can't do that. All right. And in Texas, well, in the United States on December 29th, 1845, okay, which is 180 years ago, President James Polk signed a final resolution admitting Texas as the 28th state in the Union. Now, statehood day for Texas is February 19th, okay, 1846. We know that, right? But here is what happened, okay? The vote to approve Texas annexation in 1845 saw overwhelming support from Texans, with voters approving the U.S. offer 4,245 to 257 in an October 13th election, following a 55-1 vote by the Texas Convention to accept the terms and making it a key step before U.S. Congress finally finalized statehood in December 1845. Okay, so in February 1845, okay, the House of Representatives passed the annexation resolution 132 to 76, and the Senate approved 27 to 25 after a tie-breaking vote. I don't see how you can get tie-breaking for 27-25, paving way to offer to Texas. The Texas Convention, because they were recalled back in, right? On July 4th, 1845, delegates met in Austin and voted 55-1 to accept the U.S. offer, with Richard Bache, B-A-C-H-E, casting the lone dissenting vote. I don't know who that guy is. I don't know why he wanted to not join the U.S. And then Texas voters on October 13th ratified the annexation ordinance and a new constitution in a landslide vote, 42-45 to 257. And then President James Polk signed it into law when it came back and went through Congress on December 29th, 1845. And then Texas became the 28th state, the Lone Star State. And then if you look at the map nowadays, right, you say, oh, wow, we have a cool-looking state. Well, technically, Texas went all the way, followed the whole boundary of the Rio Grande River, all the way through the middle of New Mexico, up into Colorado, and a portion of Wyoming. That was Texas. And to pay off our debts, we had to cede all that land to the United States to pay off our debts, right? That's how we got our boundaries for our state, right? So that was 180 years ago. So technically, in 2 months, less than 2 months, Texas will be officially 180 years old as a United States state, right? Even though we trace our stuff back to October 2nd, 1835. All right, so that is the JP8 report for today. So don't forget, click that follow button. I should have said it earlier. Click that follow button and click that like button, please, 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 right? I have 101 followers. I would like a few more, right? We're trying to compete with the big boys, and I'm broadcasting this week. They're all on vacation, right? I'm doing what I need to do to build up supporters. So if you want to find me on my socials, I'm on X. I'm live on X right now, James Pierce Jr. I'm live on Facebook at James A. Pierce Jr. I'm live on YouTube, or ScrewTube, however you want to call it, at the JP8 Report at 6-7. I'm on Truth Social, James A. Pierce, and that's my email address. I appreciate all the support y'all give me out there. Hey, I made it a whole hour. There's no one to try to raid to or anything. My voice is feeling pretty good. I went through 3 cough drops, I believe. That's all right. I'll live. So I will be back tomorrow. And I'll give you a rundown of what's going on. The president's talking to BB right now. So as soon as y'all get off the air with me, turn it back on Newsmax or Fox and check out the president and BB Netanyahu. Check them out. So this is James Pierce with the JP8 report. I'll catch you on the flip side. I'm out.